All right, let's get into it. Welcome to today's explainer, where we are seriously going to level up your C# skills. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by your own projects or just found yourself lost in this huge sea of confusing, buggy text, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we are breaking down 3 incredible C# secrets that professional developers use every single day to keep their projects organized, clean, and totally error-free.
Look, we've all been there, right? When you're just starting out, it is so ridiculously easy to write code that just turns into a disorganized, buggy mess. You start with this really simple idea, and then suddenly, boom, you have files with thousands of lines, errors are popping up out of absolutely nowhere, and the logic is just impossible to read. It's frustrating. It kind of feels like you're fighting against your own project instead of actually building something.
But, hey, here's the good news. You do not have to stay in that pit of despair. The difference between beginner code, which is usually full of bugs and confusion, and pro code that's clean and perfectly organized, doesn't actually come down to being some sort of genius. It really just comes down to using the right tools. Professional C# developers use 3 specific secret weapons to manage their work, and by the end of this explainer, you're going to be using them too.
All right, secret 1, partial classes.
So, picture this. You're building a massive app, and a single class file becomes an absolute nightmare to scroll through. A partial class is basically your lifeline here. It lets you split one single class across multiple separate files. All you do is add the partial keyword before the class keyword in each file. And honestly, here's the coolest part. This is purely a compile time feature. The runtime has absolutely no idea it's split up. It's totally handled by the compiler behind the scenes. Think of it literally like a giant jigsaw puzzle. You could have one piece, let's say a file called user.data.cs, that just holds the properties, like ID and email. Then you have a second piece, user.logic.cs, that holds the methods, like send welcome email. They're completely separate pieces, but when you compile your project, the C# compiler finds all these pieces and just snaps them perfectly together into one single unified user class. Now you might be wondering, why do we actually use this? Well, the #1 real-world use case is code generation. If you use frameworks like ASP.NET Core, WPF, or WinForms, they automatically generate a ton of code for you in one file. By using a partial class, you can write your own custom logic in a completely separate file for that exact same class. So when the framework regenerates its code, your custom work is totally safe. It's clean separation and absolutely zero conflicts. And this setup actually opens the door to partial methods too. You can declare a method in one file and optionally implement it in another. It's basically a hook used by source generators that says, hey, here's a method you can use if you want. But the real magic here is that if you don't implement it, the compiler silently and completely erases it from the final code. That means zero overhead and literally zero performance cost.
Moving right along to secret 2, static classes. The utility toolkit.
If partial classes organize your files, static classes give you this perfect grab-and-go toolkit. You know, you actually use these every single day without even thinking about it. Ever typed math.sqrt or a console.writeline in your C# projects? Of course you have. But notice how you never actually had to create a math object or a console object using the new keyword to use those tools? You just grab them and use them directly. That is the power of a static class.
By definition, a static class is a sealed abstract container. You can't instantiate it and you can't inherit from it. The compiler enforces 2 very strict rules here. First, absolutely no one can create an object of this class. And second, every single member inside of it must also be declared as static. It's purely a simple container for related utility functions, like say a custom unit converter with a kilometers to miles method that doesn't depend on any object state to do its job. It's just clean and simple. Okay, listen up for a second, because knowing this distinction is an absolute cheat code for your next technical interview. A top interview question is the difference between a static class and the singleton pattern. Knowing this cold will make you look like a total pro. A static class cannot be instantiated at all, and it cannot implement interfaces. A singleton, on the other hand, is a regular class designed so that exactly one instance is ever created. Because it's an instance, a singleton can implement interfaces and be passed around your code as an object. Definitely don't forget that distinction.
And that brings us to secret 3, enumerations. No more magic numbers.
Honestly, this final secret is a genuinely life-changing hack for writing clean code. Take a look at this snippet. If user status equals 2. Technically, nothing in the program is wrong here. But seriously, what does the number 2 actually mean? Does it mean the user is suspended, banned, inactive? Nobody knows. You'd have to dig through the entire code base to figure it out. We call this a magic number. a number with no clear meaning. And magic numbers are an absolute maintenance nightmare that cause endless bugs and confusion.
Enter enumerations, or enums. They solve this problem instantly. Instead of writing that confusing magic number, you define an enum, and suddenly your code looks like this: if status equals user_status.suspended. Mind blown, right? The code literally explains itself. You are replacing confusing, arbitrary numbers with crystal clear, readable names.
So, under the hood, how do enums actually work? An enum is a special value type used to define a set of named constants. By default, the underlying type is an integer, and the C# compiler automatically assigns values starting right from 0. So Sunday is 0, Monday is 1, and so on. But you have total control over this. You can make it start from 1, or even use a different type like a ushort for HTTP error codes. Plus, you can easily cast between enums and integers, which is perfect when you're working with databases or APIs that store these values as numbers.
Let's make this super practical with a real-world example. Imagine you have a shipping status enum with values like ordered, processing, shipped, in transit, and delivered. Using this makes your switch statements incredibly clean, highly readable, and completely type-safe. There's no random integers to misinterpret, no confusion, just clear, logical names that document exactly what the code is doing as you read it.
Okay, let's bring it all together into your new Pro Developer Toolkit. You now have 3 incredibly powerful tools at your disposal to cure the headache of messy code. Partial classes let you split up and organize massive files while keeping your custom logic safe from auto-generated code. Static classes give you clean, object-free utility toolkits, and enumerations completely kill off confusing magic numbers to make your code instantly readable.
I really want you to remember this quote from our source material today because it is just so incredibly important. These are not just features, they are the habits that separate beginner programmers from professional developers. Writing code that works is one thing, but writing code that is clean, organized, and that you can genuinely be proud of, that comes from mastering these exact habits.
So, question for you. Are you going to stay stuck in the mess of giant files and confusing magic numbers? Or are you ready to apply these secrets and start coding like a pro today?